Welcome back to the Barca Breakdown. My name is Adam. I'm depressed.
What's up, guys?
Smash that subscribe button if you are depressed too. I just want to clear the air here right now, okay? Let's give ourselves about 60 seconds to say this. We got effing jobbed by the refs. Just an incredibly bad performance by the referees today, and it's so funny because we got screwed against Bayern, right, on a penalty Dembele should have gotten. It was that same ref in the VAR booth who screwed us today. Xavi yesterday had that little quote about how referees should do press conferences to explain themselves because, they should be held liable. They don't do it. We get screwed today. They call Fati on a handball on that goal that Pedri should have scored, even though the FIFA rules say that if the handball is incidental and the person doesn't actually score from it, but their teammate does, goal should be allowed. Then we get screwed, right, because they don't call a handball in the box in like the 88th minute that should have given us a penalty to get us that at least one goal to draw in a huge Champions League match. Just fire off some quick referee hate before we get into the actual game.
Look, it seems like the mafia is paying the Italians, to get everything organized here and just fighting against Barcelona. I see so many things on Twitter just talking hate against Barcelona, and it ends up, this is obviously BS, but there's just so many things against us. Is this another La Who's in La Liga?
No, really, I think it is about the Super League. And I don't want to put on my tinfoil hat here, but if there is anything going on with these two huge calls, and the fact that the ref on that handball that we should have gotten in the box didn't even go to VAR to check it, I think it has to do with the Super League and the fact that the Champions League is clearly not happy with it. But let's get into the game use because it was an awful performance, man. I felt like I was watching Koeman 2.0 out there. It was a lot of crossing and praying. Yeah. There were quite a few decisions from Xavi that are just baffling. Yeah. And so I want to give it over to you to start. Where do you want to start?
Okay, I want to start with one thing is choosing the lineup, right? We only played Alonso against Bayern Munich in our first Champions League game, or against them, I should say. I think Plzen was the first one, excuse me. And he hasn't had any playtime in La Liga whatsoever. And again, we play him in a huge game where, these 3 points are extremely important because Inter is the team that if we do not beat, we're getting knocked out and we're going to the Europa League. So why are we playing Alonso again with no time under his belt in this team? And then on top of that, we don't have that many options on the right side. So you see Sergio Roberto.
Oh, Sergio Roberto. And I just want to go on your point about Alonso, right, is that you can literally see the ring rust, right? Like you can see his he's not very aware of where the strikers are, where to put crosses in, right? There were a few moments, especially in that first half, you see him do a lot of like really high crosses to the back post that just not where Lewandowski is going to be or anyone on our team who's going to cause a threat. And so I totally agree with you that Alonso was pretty baffling. And I think, by now we should know that Raphinha is not going to work on the left side, right? And at least when we had this, we did a video, I think a month ago, basically, about Raphinha and Dembele, who's better on the right, who's better on the left. Like one of the good things that we had going for us that at times we would swap them and we would see them switch sides. And we all know that, I think the general line of thinking is Dembele is better as a right winger and he's also better as a left winger, whereas Raphinha is purely good as a right winger. But again, in a big tie, in a game where we had, some pretty good understanding that Inter was going to sit back and try and hit us on the counter, we had Raphinha on that left side and he just does not provide much, right? And I don't even blame the guy. We just saw him with Brazil go off. I think he scored 2 goals in the first half in his last game with Brazil. And there was a moment in that first half where I'm looking there and I'm seeing this just interesting lineup decision that Alonso is staying very far to the left touchline, very wide, very forward, and then you have Raphinha kind of in the half space, acting like what I would have expected from Alonso as like an inverted left back, and I was just pretty baffled. Like it made no sense to me. We didn't try to swap Raphinha on the other side, and then we put Raphinha on the right side at the beginning of the second half, and he creates an opportunity where Dembele gets the ball, he gets a shot in, it gets like a little bit saved by the goalie and hits the side post, and that's Raphinha on the right, and then boom, immediately we sub him out for Ansu Fati. I'm so frustrated, Yus. This was a huge game.
I know, and to your point about this whole Raphinha, Dembele, and where to play them, we've seen them intermix between the left and right sides all the time. So why didn't that happen earlier, right? We had the first 45 minutes, we had opportunities to do that. And on top of that, let's say you even switch him over to the right wing, Dembele on the left, and that's still not working. Then you can make those substitutes and take Raphinha out, put Fati in, switch Dembele right back to the right, and then we have a strong left and right side. And, Xavi again, in a big game, ends up just taking the decision he started with at the beginning of the game and just rides it out, even though he knows it's not working. Nothing's coming together, and we end up letting them score at the end of the first half. Second half rolls around, and what happens? We don't make any changes. No subs, nothing. And so at this point,
we don't sub out Gavi or Busquets until like the 80th minute to put in Kessié, right? It was clear throughout the whole game that our midfield was just not performing well. And I know what people will say, right? Pedri was probably our man of the match besides maybe Eric Garcia in this game. But Pedri, a lot of his moments where we were impressed were from really far back, right? And you think about our friend Jalil, the purist. He's talked a lot about how even though Pedri can perform excellently in many facets and aspects of the game, seeing him try and build from deep, as like a second pivot or as the sole pivot, sometimes driving the ball from deep in the on our own half, it's just not where we need him to be, right? And Gavi in this game, it just was not working out well. There wasn't really like a lot of opponents for him to be chasing down and to show some of his like defensive prowess. And so you just had a midfield that was very dead, and it was just so predictable. That's why I made the allusion to Koeman ball earlier. It just felt like we just kept giving the ball to Dembele on the right. We had Sergio Roberto, who's not making any overlapping runs, who's hardly going forward, who's always passing it sideways, so there's no companion there for Dembele. And then you had Gavi, who in the past has done a good job of occupying that front half space and giving an outlet for Dembele. He wasn't there this game at all either. And so you had Dembele, and of course, Dembele didn't have a good game, right? As the world's biggest Dembouz fan, I'm not above calling him out for not having a good game. But what do you expect when basically the other team knows every time you're going to give it to Dembele, you're going to hope he creates some magic, and hopefully a goal comes from that, right? And it's just like against a top European team, and I understand Inter aren't doing that well, but they're better than, for instance, Mallorca, who we just played against. And even though they're on bad form, I think they take it up a level in the Champions League. And you just come against these teams that have good coaches and good solid defenders, and they're just not going to allow Dembele to run through them all the time. Right? Every time he got the ball, he was coming against 1, 2, 3 defenders.
That's what I was going to say. Let's backtrack a little bit and say, like, even if Dembele did...
Sorry, I'm riled up a little bit.
It's okay. But Dembele having not so great game, I don't think it's entirely his fault, right? Like you just talked about no overlapping runs from Sergio Roberto. You're not talking about Gavi occupying that front half third space and giving Dembele that outlet. We're not making any counters. We're letting their defense set up, and Dembele has to take on those men, like you said, 2 or 3 at a time, and trying to just work around them and then do that Koeman ball cross to nobody inside the box, nobody making runs. Lewandowski in this game was not to be found. Maybe not totally his own fault because their defense was so set up and he didn't have so much support and the opening of that final third. But at the end of the day here, it's like, okay, what were we doing to break their defense? What were we doing to adjust the game after they score that goal in the first half? The second half rolls around. They don't really have to score. They have those 3 points. They secured it. They just play a stronger defensive game if they want. And what did we do to, muddle their defense? Nothing. We ended up doing the same thing.
And a lot of our subs, right, are just like for like, right? We put in PK for Christensen because Christensen hurt his ankle. He's now out for 3 weeks. 3 of our top center backs are out. We put on Balde for Marcus Alonso. And then, we don't make another sub, Kessié for Gavi, until the 83rd minute. And it's just like, when you make a like for like sub, in a lot of ways, you're not really changing anything, although correction, right, we did put on Fati for Raphinha in like the 65th minute, but we just it feels like we come back here game after game against a low block and we just say like, wow, our team had no plan on how to break it down. And you made a very good point last video where you talked about how us beating Mallorca was based off of one magical moment from Lewandowski, and we've talked about this a little bit throughout this season because I know some of our listeners aren't always happy that we're not super enthused and super high and giving a lot of credit to Xavi and the team so far this season. It's because there have been some cracks in the mirror, right? Even though we have we're top of La Liga, 18 goals scored, I think 1 allowed. There have been some cracks here, and we've seen over and over this season against a low block that we really just don't know how to break it down. And the main drawback you and I have mentioned is that we're relying too much on individual player brilliance to win these games, just like with Lewandowski's goal against Mallorca.
Yeah, and it scares us because we're going to get into situations of or down
this
the
exact
line.
one.
Yeah, and it's going to be down the line, and it could be in La Liga, it could be in Champions League if we push past this point, if we're able to beat them in a week, or if we're able to, or they'll drop points to maybe Plzen, which I probably doubt because they're terrible in this Champions League group. But what do we like? If every team watches us play and knows that in La Liga and Champions League we're going to not be able to break this block, they can just counter us at one opportunity because Barca is susceptible. To counters. They get that one counter and then they do their block. And then they set up the defense, they park the bus, and we can't do anything. So we got to figure this out before it gets too far down the road. And then, I don't want to do this, and nobody wants to do this. Xavi is, so far this season, has been pretty great with the La Liga record. But if he's not making these adjustments, we're falling back into the other coach's mistakes, right? Koeman was like that. We just ended up being stagnant, same strategy over and over, predictability, and we end up getting frustrated as fans because we're watching it. And I've said this in the past, it's I think, okay, what is Xavi going to do versus what he should do? And a lot of times I say what he is going to do, and if I'm predicting what he's going to do, other coaches, other teams have to be doing the same and being able to line up against that and break us down. So there's just, it's just stupid. It doesn't make sense to me. I don't know what to say because at the end of the day, we're going to run into this roadblock over and over and over if these teams figure us out, and they have, right? It's slowly happening. La Liga, if we cannot secure clean sheets almost every game because we have only allowed 1 goal, something's going to happen to us. We're going to start dropping points. We play Real Madrid on the 16th, and they are right behind us, or right on top of us. I think only thing that's keeping us apart is our goal differential. So we are scoring goals, but we're not scoring goals in Champions League. So then that's another thing to even consider is why aren't we scoring goals in Champions League? What is happening?
And the tough part is, we leave the Bayern Munich game. If you watch that magical video when Yus and I went into an alternate timeline, we left that game pretty happy, even though the scoreline was 2-0, I believe, because, we created chances. We had our shots. Pedri missed 1. Lewandowski missed 1.5 chances, right? And that could have easily changed the game. We didn't get the Dembele call. But we were happy in that game in a lot of ways because Bayern Munich are not afraid of us. And so they were willing to play a game where they're trying to win back the ball in the midfield, win it from their back line, right? When we're trying to hit them on a counter. And so it was a very open game. And when you get those open games, you get the best of Ousmane Dembele, right, running at opponents. You get the best of Lewandowski interplaying with the wingers of the midfield and then, making runs to try and get free for the ball. And so it's a little bit of a conundrum, right? So we can't meet the top teams who are willing to play us in an open game, and then we're struggle against the teams who are at our level or below who are playing a low block. And so unfortunately we're getting a bit of the worst of both worlds here.
Yeah, it's not a good future.
And one other thing, by the way, right? If you're Balde and you've been playing well, everyone's very happy with you. And then twice in the biggest games of the season, you don't get the chance to start because Marcos Alonso starts ahead of you, and then you see the performances he put in, and he was better against Bayern than he was today against Inter Milan, where he was pretty dreadful offensively. I mean, you have to be thinking, well, what's going on here, right? I mean, it's the same thing you and I are thinking. It's just how do we keep putting in Alonso in these big Champions League games when he does not have the minutes to back it up? If Alonso was getting 50%, 75% of the minutes throughout the season, I would be like, okay, this makes total sense for him to get these big games, but he's really not. And so just how we're gonna plug in kind of a wild card player who does not have the highest upside, I think, for the way we play in our team. It leaves you kind of scratching your head. Yeah,
you're questioning Xavi's choices at this point, right? It's why is he making these decisions in the toughest times or the most detrimental times? Because we have seen Balde play so many minutes. He's gained that confidence. We've seen him come a long way. So why is he not getting those opportunities to show what he can do in these games.
I mean, he has the most assists in La Liga, I think.
Damn. This is really damn. I didn't know that.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's only 3 at this point in the season, but I mean, he does, and he's created some goals, right? We remember that early goal he created for Lewandowski, I think, against La Real. And so, yeah, I'm just kind of scratching my head, and I'm feeling pretty upset about how the team has been lining up under Xavi. I mean, you know, maybe I need to listen to my previous advice, which is just that we need to take it game by game, and you know, just have some patience with the young team, right? We're not going to just be world beaters all of a sudden, but this is like the most consequential game of our pre-World Cup season, right? Okay. Like this game, like we now. Go ahead.
No, I was going to say your point there, like taking a step back and just taking game by game and trusting the process in a sense is very fair. But at the same time, where the problem is, we're seeing these issues float up,
issues, yeah.
And so it's like these systemic issues in the team that if it keeps on going the way it's going, we're not going to be able to go game by game, because it's just going to be the same story every time, and then we're going to be depressed every time. It's like it's kind of like every year in the Champions League we are depressed, but this is going to overflow into La Liga, and that's going to be really bad. But yeah, I totally get your point, and we should look forward and look towards positive outlooks on this team, because there are some. But I think one of the highlights of what you said in this video is that we're relying too much on individual player brilliance or skill. We really need the team to come together and have a strategy and kind of a formula of our team, right? It seems like a lot of times we have one strategy for that coming into the game, and we execute it until it kills itself, and then they counter us and score.
But that's what's hard, right? Like I see what you're saying, but the strategy in this game, I don't know how anyone could come away with it, especially in the second half where it got even more pronounced with like, this is a cross and pray game,
sure.
Right? Like that's literally all we were trying to do. I didn't see any midfielders, Pedri or Xavi, making a run into the box. Yeah. I didn't really see any wingers making a run right off the ball. I didn't see any of our right or left back making a run. And so it's just yeah, like it's kind of like we're devoid of a plan. And that's just not good enough, especially against teams that are coming out with a predictable defensive lineup.
Yeah, I mean, the future holds, this month is going to be tough. So this Inter was the beginning of the test of this month, and we've already failed that. So, yeah.
And it's the cruel game. Mm-hmm. I think the only other things I would talk about in this game, I mean, it kind of goes in the same vein as the Alonso and Balde thing. Is like, do we really think Jordi Alba would have put in a worse shift than Marcos Alonso today? I don't really think so. So it has me wondering if something happened on the private side of everything, where did Xavi and Alba have a falling out that's causing some sort of issues there? Because you got to think Jordi Alba would have put in a better performance than what we saw today. And then, something we've been saying, but Pedri and Xavi as a midfield in these big games, sometimes, it leaves a lot to be desired oftentimes. And I just think that we need to become, and this is, a point we've been harping on for a few weeks now, we need to move Kessié from this, 10-minute a game kind of throwaway footballer to someone who gets more and more time. I mean, I think it was against Mallorca, he didn't have the best performance, but we need someone to rotate in there, right? Like when our midfield's clearly being frozen out, and Kessié, he showed a lot of fans and pundits and the Barca board what he could do at AC Milan last season, and so I really think we need to give him some more time and some more serious moments to try and build his comfortability with our team throughout the season. And then I wish Frankie De Jong was there, because I think his player profile could have done a lot of good today.
Sure, but he was injured, of course. But for Kessié, for example, I don't know why he's not getting enough opportunities. Once we figure out...
Well, he's not been great use.
Yeah, but...
that must be said too,
if you
right?
don't get that much time, it's hard to be so consistent. And, Xavi doesn't seem to have such a solid plan set up for the team, right? Every player seems to not 100% have a fulfilled role that they need to employ every game. And so Kessié comes into these games and he seems like he doesn't really have a direction. He doesn't what is his
he's in the box a lot. That's the profile I get from him.
But it just seems like he doesn't he's not like 100% confident with that role yet, because a lot of times it seems like it overlaps with Lewandowski's position and clutters that mid space, and so I don't think that is the best situation. We have seen him take a couple shots, I think, right outside the box at the top, but that's also not his profile either, right? He's a very large man. He should be able to, as opposed to Pedri and Gavi, he should be able to get into that midfield, bully some of the guys, create some space, and push the ball forward. But we don't really see that as often, and we don't give him enough chances to do that and get that time. If, like you said, if we're only giving him 10 minutes, or we're giving him the first half of Mallorca, or whatever the case may be, he just needs to, get more time. Balde had the same thing. He had to get more time. He wasn't very good. He's come a long way. Kessier's in a new system, from AC Milan, and now he's with Barca. So, yeah. I mean, there's so much that needs to be fixed, just coming off this Champions League game, and I really hope we figure it out, because we have a week, Adam. A week to figure it out. Yeah,
I mean, that's the thing, right? Looking forward, we have to beat Inter Milan by at least 2 goals, I think. Then we have to assume that we're going to lose to Bayern again at home. Yeah. They're going to lose to Bayern again, and then we'll beat Plzen, right? So we have to, I mean, it's not in our favor. Now we're coming back to the Camp Nou, where Barca have always done well, right? We remember the last few, 5 seasons of Suarez never scoring away from the Camp Nou in the Champions League, and how much that haunted us, and just in general, our away play hasn't been that good in the Champions League. And so I'm hoping back at the Camp Nou, we do have Inter Milan and Bayern Munich at home, right? If the team's going to really fight and prove something, this is it, and this is as good of a situation as you could want to be at home for these big games, and that's a little bit my last point on this game that kind of disturbs me, is that it really doesn't seem like the team was fired up to play a final, right? Like a big game today. It just seemed very lackadaisical overall, and I wasn't, besides Dembele and Pedri, I really didn't see a lot of players out there like trying to give their heart for the game, and I just hope that this is a little bit of a wake-up call, or that Xavi finds another way to rally the troops so that we're ready for the next 3 weeks.
Yeah. Well, we'll wrap that up there. We have Celta Vigo coming this weekend on Sunday. They always give us a hard time, but it is at home, so it's kind of nice to have Celta Vigo at home, and then the Inter Milan game at home as well. So looking forward to that, Adam. We will catch you guys this Sunday after that Celta Vigo game. Wish us the best of luck, because we got to win this one for La Liga, stay ahead of Real Madrid. Have a good week, folks. We'll see you soon. Thank you.
Thanks.